You're listening to Femmefluence Radio, created for women desiring more influence and affluence and are looking for other women who want the same. I'm your host, Jennifer Kem, but you can call me Jen. I'm a serial entrepreneur and founder who's built 4 multi-million-dollar companies. I'm also a mom to 3 amazing humans and a wifey to the self-proclaimed slay-at-home dad. Whoa, that makes me tired just saying out loud. On this show, we'll have the real BS-free conversations that every woman wants to have, but no one's talking about with the honesty we deserve. We'll chat on the intersection of too muchness and not enoughness, what aligned success looks and feels like, and what it takes to dismantle old systems, beliefs, and thinking that get in the way of what we really want. If you're an ambitious woman looking for a collective that will support you as you grow into the next level leader you and everyone else knows, likes, and trusts, then stick around because you're already home and amongst friends. Now, let's go build longer tables together. As women, we're not only carrying too much baggage sometimes, we're carrying a lot of trash, especially between our ears. I say this a lot. The distance between where you are, your point A, and where you want to be, point B, is about 5 inches between your ears. And here's the thing, because of lack of boundaries, mentorship, a community, and a clean environment to operate in, and for more on that, visit our episode on being values driven a little bit earlier in Femmefluence Radio. Because of that, we tend to clutter up our brains with things we shouldn't be available for. We justify these things as necessary to how our lives are set up. So much so that we're calling that trash between our ears recycled and claiming ourselves eco-friendly. But in all seriousness, that's just a metaphor for the word insanity. Hoping and doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results. Based on these facts that are there, we need to be awake about this, ladies. Because of the CEOs, for example, who lead the companies that make up the 2018 Fortune 500 list, there are just 22 women that run those companies. And sadly, that number is down 25% from last year's record-breaking 32 female CEOs, which was the highest share of women since the Fortune's first 500 list in 1955. So the thing is, not only are there only 22 women CEOs in the Fortune 500 index, not one of those women is Black. Also, none of the women who are no longer CEOs, they lost 10 in the Fortune 500, were replaced by other women. They were replaced by men. And so the facts is that the glass ceiling at Fortune 500 companies, especially for women of color, exists. Now, this isn't completely all about discrimination, although I'm sure it plays a big factor because the facts are there. But the main factor is that there needs to be a better pipeline to build women leaders up. And Femmefluence was created to help women like us decide for ourselves what leadership looks like and whether our brilliance is best served inside of a company or one that we build ourselves. The great thing about being on our campus and in our community is that you're going to get tools to choose either or both. Because the way to rise to the top is to get seen and heard so that we can get paid what we're due on our terms. And most of that starts with the willingness and commitment to amplifying ourselves by building personal brands no one can ignore. That's why in this episode, we're going to learn the 3 most important mindset principles for creating amplification around anything we want to put our hearts and minds to and create a brand that no one can ignore at the same time. So let's jump into those right now. The first step in creating amplification for your personal brand is courage. Because most people don't build master brands because they simply don't believe that they have what it takes, or they think that seat is already taken by someone else. And we know that's not true. There's room for all of us at the table. Now, one way that I personally access courage, and believe it or not, I have to access it a lot, okay, is by making the goal linked to number one, my values, and number two, having a community that dares me to do things and helps me make way bigger leaps than I would even dare to do myself. Courage is a heart word. The root of the word courage is cor, which is the Latin word for heart. In one of its earliest forms, the word courage meant to speak one's mind by telling all one's heart. Over time, this definition has changed, and today we typically associate courage with heroic and brave deeds. But in my opinion, this definition fails to recognize the inner strength and level of commitment required for us to actually speak honestly and openly about who we are and about our experiences, good and bad. Speaking from our hearts is what I think of as ordinary courage. Now, that little paragraph I just told you about, that wasn't me. That was from Brene Brown, where in an essay she wrote, was called I Thought It Was Just Me, Women Reclaiming Power and Courage in a Culture of Shame. Now, the bottom line is this. A lot of times what keeps us from daring greatly, Brene's phrase for courage, is that we worry about being wrong and fear that people will criticize our words, thoughts, and efforts. But I have some really good news for you. You're right. You will be wrong sometimes. And some people will criticize our words, thoughts, and efforts. In the episode I recorded on one of our Femmefluence values, which is called imperfection, imperfection is part of achieving affluence and influence. So instead of worrying that you're going to be wrong, you're actually right on this one. So there's that. Courage is absolutely welcome here, especially when it comes in the form of imperfect action. We celebrate all of that. So the next step in accessing and amplifying your personal brand is attitude. Because building a successful life and career is 99% mindset and 1% mechanics. Pretty much all of it is mindset. So what's the attitude and adjustment you have to make in your daily life to focus on the prize and maximize every opportunity? Well, I want to share with you 5 mental attitudes and traits of leaders who have what I call Femmefluence. The first mental attitude is a sense of mission and purpose. So that means that the person who has the attitude of a mission and purpose looks at beingness as something they're very intently focused on. So beingness is really about being present, instead of just going through the motions or doing things because they've always been that way. Successful leaders choose. They don't wait to be chosen. So that's another piece right there. And they go ahead, as Brene Brown says, gets their ass kicked out on the playing field. They play full out, not sitting on the sidelines, either not saying a word or criticizing those that are in the arena getting their butt kicked. They're also really good at putting discipline around their desires. And so the key to success and having a winning attitude and being a Femmefluence leader has everything to do with knowing what your desires are and deciding, even if you're the type of person that likes to explore and discover and is multi-passionate about things, that you know that you need to put a few disciplines in place in order to achieve specific milestones. So that's the first piece. The second trait of a Femmefluence leader is that you go beyond outcome-based goals. So outcomes are not the goal. Your values being filtered is the goal. And as a result of living through your values, you get the results and outcomes that you're looking for. The third trait is separating emotion from facts, because feelings and intellect are the mind-body relationship. So it's important to feel things. Your mind will feel your body and vice versa. But if you allow your feelings to spill over and become emotion, it becomes a distraction and sours our attitudes and gets in the way of our momentum. The fourth trait is being better and stronger under pressure. So basically finding strength under fire. In a previous episode, I talked about how we're not even the pearl, we're the oyster, right? We can handle the grit that is placed in our fleshy parts and learn to turn them into precious gems. We were born for resilience. And so that doesn't mean that we have to tolerate abuse or stress at an abnormal level. But those who have the attitude of a Femmefluence leader understand that that grit and that grace is a necessary initiation, if you will, of success. And finally, the fifth trait is confidence through action, which I mentioned that activation is one of the steps of the Master Brand Method in the last episode. Because every time we take a step, it's actually not completely to hit the goal. Yep, it's not to hit the goal. It's to build the muscles of confidence. Successful people protect their confidence as paramount. And it does really help when you have a community who has your back too. But notice that this is so critical because the people that influence the world appear to be confident in what they know, in what they say, and it doesn't always have to look like boastful or extroverted. It just is a sense of certainty. And that is so important. The way you get certainty and the way that you get confidence is through action. Because then your brain doesn't have to overthink, is this going to work? You just absolutely do it. So then there's the third way to amplify your personal brand and your life. So that last way is called ownership. Builders of master brands are leaders in every area of their life. This requires a level of self-responsibility and ownership that 90% of people never get the opportunity to learn. This is not just about becoming a business owner. It's about owning all the success in every single aspect of your life. Because we're not just business leaders, right, ladies? We're moms, sisters, friends, lovers, and most of all, we're ourselves and need to be clear on our available resources and make ourselves unavailable to things outside of our values. Remember, the pursuit of anything over everything is how we roll around here. And to have true ownership, you have 3 levers to manage, something I call the Tem Matrix. And Tem simply stands for time, energy, and money. So how are you managing those 3 things in the matrix that we live in? I will tell you this, out of the 3, the most important one of these is energy. Because when we do things that are linked to our values, we show up as energetic. In fact, introverts show up more extroverted without getting exhausted, and extroverts manage where they spend their time better and don't get overcommitted all over the place. It's a beautiful place to be. When you manage your personal Tem Matrix, you own your life instead of it owning you. Now that's music to my highest value, which is autonomy. Now, when did I discover that courage, attitude, and ownership were required for me to amplify my own personal brand? In the last episode, I mentioned I'd share a little more on that, how I mustered the courage to leave my high 6-figure job and start a business in women's underwear, of all things. Well, let's go through the 3 things. For the courage part, I consulted with my closest friends, one of whom is the COO of one of my companies today. Back then, she was another ally in corporate, a fellow badass who was managing network engineers. You can imagine all the geeky men. Well, I ran the marketing division. Having at least one friend who said, "Girl, you got this," and then helped me work on a 9-month exit plan to leave is the type of woman you need to have around you. Am I right? There are a lot of them here in Femmefluence Nation, so be sure to stick around because I'll have an announcement on how you can meet others like us soon. Now, for the attitude part, once I made the decision to leave, I spent at least 1 hour a day visualizing what the other side of my corporate job would look like. I bought a journal specifically for this 9-month plan, and every day I'd write in it one thing I'll be able to do when I made the leap. I have that journal to this day and reference it when I need to pick me up from a really hard one. Now, for the ownership part, this is an area I'm the most committed to to this day. And I don't imagine that I'll ever stop trying to manage my own personal Tem Matrix. I'm a sentinel for my time and energy. And as far as money goes, I know how much I want to make and give away every quarter. In fact, my friend recently told me, somebody who runs a 7-figure business online and wanted to have a chat with me and actually hire me to consult inside their business, said, "Dang, Jen, you're harder to get a hold of than Jesus." I'm going to go ahead and take that as a compliment, not because I don't love people, but because I've learned the very hard way how my energy depletes when I have too much on my plate. And the hours I dedicate to personal and business are planned out weekly now, and I need that in order to not survive, but thrive. I used to say yes to everything, but now I'm the master of no thank you. And don't get me wrong, I do sometimes get FOMO, but for the most part, I'm good. Because whenever I've had or I've let a leak or a fissure happen in this area, I've always regretted it. I bet you know how that feels because your intuition and your intellect know when you're stretched too thin. I also hate to let people down or say no to people. And the thing is that when I do the things that I'm not supposed to do, I end up letting them down anyway. So it's really important to not fall trap to being the yes girl all the time. Now, it's time for our worksheets. I want you to take a look at the most important mindset principles for creating amplification around anything we put our hearts and minds to. Remember, they are courage, attitude, and ownership. Using what you learned in this episode, what's one thing you'll commit to strengthening in each of these 3 areas? And can I share something I'm focused on right now? I'm on a mission to mentor at least 1,000 women leaders this year to up their affluence and influence by building a powerful master brand. And most of all, turn their amplification all the way up. So I've created a bonus training for you this week that teaches you how to do just that. So go to buildyourbrandempire.com/FF and choose the time slot that works for you because this is going to be the week that it happens. Next time on Femmefluence Radio, what if I handed you the insight to your own personal psychology that gives you what I call the brand vantage you've been looking for? Good news is, it's all science and is a major predictor of your success and leadership. If you want to know all about it, make sure to tune in to our next episode. Thanks for listening to Femmefluence Radio. If you resonated with this episode, please leave us a review and let other women know about it. Remember, we're building longer tables here. Follow us on Instagram at Femmefluence_official to stay in the conversation, and also visit Femmefluence.com to sign up and receive things I only give to our listeners and friends. I look forward to our next chat.